NFL fans. Today is Tuesday, December 2nd. This is the Shutdown Corner Podcast. I am Kevin Kaduk, here with Frank Schwab and Jay Busbee. We hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. But I gotta say, those three games, as awesome we thought they'd be, man, that was a stinker.
It was like, looking forward to the little Thanksgiving meal. You're all set up, you're ready to go, and the turkey is dry, and the stuffing is mealy, and the conversation turns to politics, and you're like, oh my God.
Maybe we should just kind of come out and say it. There's been a lot of bad football in 2014. For
we've been
excited, for as interesting as some of the top teams have been, you go through and look, there's 8 teams with 3 or less wins.
I know. And you know what? I think it's been an interesting season as far as storylines, as far as like J.J. Watt in the MVP race, that kind of stuff. But the actual games, the 190-some games or however many have been played so far, there have been very, very few good games. Really, like I hate to say it because it's kind of our business and I want to be like excited about what we do. But the product on the field, there's been so many blowouts. Before Sunday's games, 25.6% of games had been decided by 20 or more. That's a huge percentage. And it didn't get any better on Sunday with the Rams winning by 52 and all the other, there were a few other blowouts. They're just bad games. I was at that Denver KC game. It wasn't technically a blowout. I think it ended up being a 13-point game, but a 16-point game. But it wasn't good. It wasn't a good game. I was in the press box and I was bored. I hate to say it, but it was like, this game's over. It was over in the first 9 minutes.
Yeah, I think I instant messaged you and I said, I really hope this doesn't turn into last year's Broncos and Chiefs games where the Broncos scored 2 early touchdowns and It's just never a game, and that's exactly what happened.
You got 4 teams right now that have scored less than 100 points than their opponents. Their net points are in triple figures already. Yeah, you've got the teams getting beat up on, but then not only that, you've got quality teams that just don't show up on a given week. So it goes back to what we were talking about early on in the season about how inconsistent every team is.
Yeah, it's not parity. Parity, I've said this, we've talked about this on this podcast many times. Everybody's going to say, oh, there's so many teams in the AFC involved in a playoff race, and the NFC race is so good. Parity rules. This isn't parity when every game is being decided by 3 touchdowns. It's something different, and I don't know the word for it. Probably inconsistency. Just teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who knows what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do from week to week, for example. But it's not parity. It's something completely different this year.
Well, it's just and then you look at, the Jaguars and Vikings. Yeah, they had great, wins and whatever. And it's like, well, both of those teams had 2 fumbles returned for touchdowns. That's not good football, is it?
The Panthers had 2 punts blocked for touchdowns in the first half. One, maybe 2, no.
And not in week 13. Not in week 13 either.
No, not up in here.
So I don't know. So what did you take most from the weekend? On the flip side, I think that Packers-Patriots game stood up as well as anything.
Yeah, we did get one good game. That was a good game. That was a game that if that kind of game happens in the Super Bowl, I think we'd all be, yeah, that's pretty cool. That was a good game. The power rankings came out today, and I didn't move the Patriots at all because the Packers are just that good at home right now. They're that team. They're kind of the 2013 Seahawks where I just don't think you're going into Green Bay and beating them. And that's why the race for the number 1 seed means so much these last 4 weeks, because I think if the Packers get it, it's over. I think Packers going to the Super Bowl, we're probably seeing a rematch of what we saw on Sunday.
So what has the response been from Packers fans that you
I haven't heard from any yet. They're probably too giddy to get at me. Maybe they're thinking of that Wisconsin Duke game on Wednesday. I'm not sure. But
I like as an aside, I liked your post about taking on both Urban Meyer and Mike Krzyzewski for Wisconsin.
Yes, Urban Meyer and Mike Krzyzewski 1 week. Jeez,
and Bill Belichick.
And Bill Belichick for the Packers, yeah. Hey, look, the Packers are a really good team. The Patriots are a really good team. And I kind of wrote today, the Philadelphia Eagles, nobody's talking about them either. We have a few teams that are really kind of rising. And that I hope, it's kind of like one of those, we're having a bad regular season, so we're going to have a great playoffs. I hope that comes into play. And you can kind of see it coming where we're going to have some really good matchups when we get there.
Well, in line with that, another team that surprised was the Chargers. What's your perspective on them? Could they knock off one of the 2 big presumed titans of the AFC?
On their best day, sure. They're another team. Look, they didn't play good football at all for about 6 weeks. And that's a long time. That's a long time. Even their wins were like, they're eking out wins against the Raiders. Okay, well, I'm not impressed with that. But they go on the road, they get a great win. I know they didn't like blow them out or anything, but to win that game at Baltimore the way they did, driving down, impressive, really good. And it sets up this crazy AFC race where, I don't know who's going to make it. There's so many teams involved in the mix right now. I just have no idea how this thing shakes out.
Yeah, we wrote off that charge. I don't want to say we wrote them off, but the Chargers lost 3 in a row. And now they've quietly won 3 in a row, and it's just like, wow, holy cow, they're 8-4.
I was surprised to say
when I was like, I completely forgotten. And there's a glut of teams at 7-5, and the Chargers are a game better than them. And the Chiefs, the team that we've been focusing on and saying this is a pretty good team. They're done in the AFC West, at least for the title. They're not catching the Broncos with 2 down with 4 to go.
No, when I wrote into Chargers record in the power rankings, I was like, wow, 8-4. Okay, well, but that's a funny thing. They were great in September, disappeared for most of October, most of November, and here they are 8-4, and who knows what we're going to get out of them next week.
You got 6 teams at 7-5 looking at it right now. And those are very, very different 7-5s. The Cleveland Browns 7-5 is a whole lot different than the Dolphins 7-5. So we'll get to the lightning round about who you think is going to come out of that later. But it seems at this point that these teams are just going to beat up on each other right until the last week, and we're going to have a hell of a final Sunday.
Yeah, just like last year. The Dolphins, they have to be sitting there and thinking, man, we let one get away against the Lions. We let one get away against the Packers. They just have to be like, well, we are lying in a bed that we made. And it almost was even worse for them had they not pulled it out late against the Jets last night.
Boy, that was going to be a disaster. Yeah, you can't lose that games like that because they still have tough games to go. I know they play the Patriots. I mean, they have a reasonably tough schedule down the stretch. So, yeah, it's going to get interesting. And hopefully now we're going to start in December. We get these great games and, we get these, whoever loses this game really is eliminated. I mean, we're not just talking about it anymore. They're gone if they lose this one. So I think it's almost like the playoffs are going to start, especially for those AFC teams. It pretty much starts now for them.
So the other big story, I think, over the weekend coming in on Monday morning was Johnny Manziel showing up for a spell in Buffalo and looking really good on that drive and injecting a lot of fun into that match, which was Buffalo didn't look good the first half, and then they just kind of scored 2 touchdowns in 10 seconds and started pulling away from it. But then Manziel kind of saved the Browns from Brian Hoyer and made things interesting. And Frank got all hot and lathered, and he was really excited.
I was, dude. Like, I'm sitting there and I'm watching these games, and let's be honest, those early games, except for Baltimore, San Diego, really, which wasn't even a great. It was one of those weird games where I thought Baltimore was going to win the whole time, so I wasn't really engaged until the end. But honestly, you're watching those early games, and I'm just kind of glazed over, and like, these games are not very good. And all of a sudden, Johnny comes in, and it was like Christmas Day, man. I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. We've been waiting for this. And people can say what they want about Johnny Manziel, and I'm not going to argue it. He might be the worst guy in the NFL. I don't know, whatever. But you got to – if he's in the game, you're watching. You are watching to see what he does, and he did his Johnny things. He throws a pass that should have been intercepted and somehow gets through to the tight end. He runs for the touchdown and dives in and does the money thing. I was transfixed. I have no problem saying this at all. I hope the Browns start Johnny Manziel. I'm a huge fan of watching him play. I don't care even if he succeeds or fails. I just like watching the guy play. He's fun. He's fun to watch. He's a fun story. I am all in on the Johnny football.
What do the Browns have to gain from going with Brian Hoyer the rest of the way?
Well, here's I'll separate it. For what I just said about how excited I am about Johnny football, on just the side of the Browns, if I'm Mike Pettin right now, and I'm thinking about this through, you're 7-5 and you're in it, and Brian Hoyer has shown you good football before, and I don't think Johnny football's ready. I think he could use the full year. Let's put it that way. I don't know if he really gets better playing in December. I think he's going to go out there just improvise because he's really not prepared to run an NFL offense. He needs the time. He's really raw as far as just he comes from a offense at Texas A&M that has nothing to do with what they do in the NFL. I mean, it's just different worlds. So if I'm Mike Pettin, I'm thinking, Brian Hoyer right now can can function in my offense. Maybe he's been woken up by being benched, snapped out of it. And it's so much easier to go, if week 15, if it still isn't working, it's so much easier to go from Hoyer to Manziel than it is to go from Manziel back to Hoyer. Like, once you make a move, it's over. It's done. You're Johnny Football the rest of the year. So I think that they have to consider that too. If I was Pettin, I'd go back to Hoyer, to be honest with you.
Well, look what they've got coming up. They've got the Colts, they got the Bengals, they got the Panthers, and they got the Ravens. Now, 3 of those 4 are going to be difficult to some degree or another. I mean, would you trust, and it sounds like no, having Manziel in the backfield for any of those 4 matches except for maybe Carolina?
No, not really. Not right now. I think he needs an off season. I think he needs a lot of work. But we've also seen guys get in, give their team some juice, give their fan bases some juice, and they kind of fool everybody for a month. And yes, I'm talking about Tim Tebow. I think that it's also if you told me Pettin goes with Manziel and he just does his Johnny things for a month and he's not really running an offense the way he should be running, but he's making plays like he did at Buffalo, I could buy into that. Hey, maybe. But the thing is, he's got to get this right because they're 7-5. They're right in the playoff race. And this also charts your course for the next few years, too. I think if you bench Hoyer now, he's going to be a free agent. You're done with Brian Hoyer. He's not resigning with you. I mean, he's done. I wouldn't sign with Cleveland if I was Brian Hoyer and I got benched for Johnny Manziel. So this decision is humongous for the Cleveland Browns.
Frank, just for purposes of search engine optimization and popularity, can I say that you just said Manziel may be the new Tebow?
And I think that one of them might be dating Kate Upton.
There you go. Boom. Hit the trifecta.
Break the internet. Let me put this out to you, though, Frank. Sure. You're a Browns team. You're 7-5. You have a tough schedule coming up. You have a glut of teams going for those wild cards in the AFC. You still have the division in play, but of course, the three teams.
You got Bengals still, right? And you got
right. So that's still in play. Maybe you have to do something different. Maybe you have to think outside the box. So if you're Mike Penny, I can never say his name right. Petty. I hate it. Whatever. Mike P.
Browns coach.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a football announcer. But if you're the Browns coaching staff, why don't you think outside the box and say, okay, Johnny Manziel is not a guy who we think can take us from quarter 1 to quarter 4, but is he a guy that can shake things up for one drive in the second quarter or maybe one in the third? Is that the sort of thing you can game plan for, or is that just too outside of the box for the NFL?
No, you know what? I think that it's different. I mean, and already Mike Patton is, and now you got me. Patton. He's already said we're not going to do the 2 quarterback thing, but I don't know why not. You're right. He could be a guy, comes in, just gives you a spark. He's not out there throwing 40 times, but he's in there for 5 drives, 4 drives, whatever. And he gives you a little bit of juice like he did at Buffalo. I don't discount that at all.
Man. Like they did a couple trick plays early in the season, then we never saw him again. Right. It's just like, why not? If you got a weapon, you got a guy in shoulder pads, you got in his team, why not maximize everything that you have on your roster? It's like the quarterback. Of course, if you have Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, sure, you're never going to pull those guys out. But if you don't, why not think about this as optimizing what you have and using everybody's talents? You use 7 or 8 guys on the line throughout a game. Why not?
It's just I think NFL teams. And also part of his practice reps. You only have so many, and you don't want to split them up among your quarterbacks. You want to give one guy as many as you can. It's kind of old school thinking, though. Yeah, you see college teams do it.
Yeah, go full Spurrier, man. Just have both guys on the field at the same time. You never know who's going to come out of the hunt.
I don't. Yeah, why not think out of the box? Your offense isn't great right now. I mean, it's okay. You got some pieces, but. Yeah, be creative, do something different. I'd have no problem with that, but it's not going to happen. I mean, they're going to go with one guy or another. And the thing about Manziel, if they do go to Manziel, it's Kyle Shanahan's the offensive coordinator there. And Kyle Shanahan was the guy in 2012 who turned RG3 into a star. And what's been the narrative about RG3? Well, his rookie season, they ran this offense that was unsustainable. But you could get by with it for a while and fool some teams. Well, isn't that what we're dealing with now? You got a month left. Do some of the things that really play into what Johnny does well. It's not going to be your offense next year, but just cater something to where try to fool teams for a month, get into the playoffs, which would be enormous for that Browns franchise. So they kind of got the right guy in place in Kyle Shanahan if they do go to Johnny to maximize what he does.
Is it possible that the other teams have enough tape on Hoyer that they can figure out his tendencies? And I mean, I think we used this comparison before. A hitter going through the league the first time has the advantage, and then pitchers catch up to him in baseball. Is it possible that Manziel could throw enough different looks at them to, as you say, fool them for 4 weeks?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, he hasn't played a ton. I mean, teams, and that's the thing. It's and we talked. Our buddy Greg Cosell does a lot of great stuff for us. Talks about this. It's like, how can a defense prepare for a guy like Manziel? Because the offense doesn't know what he's going to do. So how can a defense prepare for what he does? He's so random. He's going to be a random guy. He's not going to be a guy who you say, here's the play, run it as functioned, let's get it done. He's going to be a guy that hits the last step of his drop and just takes off and runs around and makes something happen. And that's not something you could do for a 10-year career, but is it something you could do for 4 games? Yeah, maybe.
If you were a Browns opponent and let's say Manziel was the starter, would coaches go back to Texas A&M and look at that tape? Is that the sort of thing that happens?
So I don't know if you have enough time to do that in season, but you could. Yeah, I've heard of that. Teams will go back and look at preseason, but they'll look at a little. But it's so tough because the level of competition just isn't the same. The things Johnny Manziel could do in the SEC, he can't do that in the AFC North. That's just not happening. I mean, it's just not. But
Alabama fans are going to be filling your email mailbox now.
I know that, but it's you'd look at anything you could, but I don't think you could get a great read of his tendencies. And again, I don't think the Browns would know his tendencies. I don't think the Bengals or anybody else they play would know what he's going to do.
Yeah. All right, before we move on to the lightning round, I want to give a quick salute to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, put 12 players on the field for what would have been a completion that would have set up a game-winning field goal. And not only did you let the Bengals win, but you allowed one Mr. Kevin M. Kaduk to survive another week in Survivor. It was glorious.
Yes.
Glorious.
I applaud you, Kevin. By the way, let me ask you a question, and I want both of you guys to answer. Is it possible Lovie Smith is one and done? Is it possible they fire him after the season?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you were on the bandwagon to start with. A lot of people were for the Buccaneers, but don't you have to give a coach a little bit of time to settle in?
They look so awful, and when you do something like start Josh McCown on a 2-9 team, when he's not even the best option right now, and when you do something like have 12 guys on the field on offense. There's a big difference.
They have lost so many games so many ways this year. And we should really go through a post and say, look at these 10 losses that the Buccaneers had. Like, it's just unbelievable. What they lose to the Falcons? 50-0?
Yes, they got 56-0 to start.
They lost by 1 point. So many different ways.
Not being able to get Mike Evans off the field on time and losing to Derek Anderson at home. And this one, though, there's such huge difference between 12 men on the field on defense and offense. Defense, you're running guys in and out, different packages. You line up on offense, and you don't know you have 12 guys? Like,
you call timeout.
What? How does that possibly? You take a delay game if you don't have timeout. What? I just don't know how on earth you could line up with 12 guys on offense and not notice. And nobody noticed. Like, the offensive coordinator sends – that's just it's such a total failure on that coaching staff that happened in that game at that time. That I really – let me put it this way. I don't think the Buccaneers will fire Lovie Smith. But I think if they did, they'd have some cause. I think that they would say there's nothing good this season. Nothing at all.
Fire him. I think that Lovie Smith has too much respect in the game to be a one-and-done guy. It's not like this is his first job and it was just completely overmatched. I think he's gone through there. He's gotten rid of some of the people that he didn't like, the attitudes, whatever. So, of course, the McCown thing is inexcusable to me. But and then other thing is I know Malcolm Glazer wasn't the most hands-on owner. But with his passing, I don't think that you really want to put the franchise at even more flux where you start playing coaching roulette. I could be wrong, but you need some stability at some point. I think you need someone to carry yourself into that next thing, and it's got to be. You got to give Lovie another year or two. I think
it's just been so shocking how bad they've been. I mean, so in every single possible way, they've been an embarrassment. I mean, just terrible. Like,
but where do you put the blame? I mean, if you give Lovie a pass, where do you put the blame then? Do you put it on the quarterbacks? Do you put it on the front office?
I don't know.
No, I think you blame Lovie. I just don't think it's a fireable.
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting fired after 1 year.
I think it'd be justified. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it'll happen just because teams don't do that, but unless you're the Browns. But I think it would be justified just because they have been so terrible, and there are just no signs of. It's not just like
that surprises me. He's got such a reputation as a players coach, and you really haven't seen. You think at least a players coach would have whipped someone up into a frenzy and beat. Not that Lovie was a whipping into a frenzy guy, but he had guys who wanted to play for him, and we really haven't seen everyone come together and say, "Look, we're not going to let the season be an embarrassment." I mean, even Schiano had a better, more signs of life late in the season than Lovie Smith's team has this year. So I think that's surprising to me.
It's just bad in Tampa. That team has talent, and a guy like Mike Evans is having an all-time rookie year too. Like it's not like they've had guys disappoint. They've had
such
guys
a bad division.
Guys,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're overlooking the fact that they are still in the playoff hunt. I mean,
well, that was the fun part. I mean, I was actually paying close attention to that game because of my interest in it. I told Frank it was like a Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know, because gambling makes everything better.
Yeah,
that's what I said to you. This is why the NFL succeeds, because I am interested in this game.
Yes, and there were people last night who had Ryan Tannehill or Lamar Miller who were watching that game on pins and needles, and
who had it decided by a last-second Geno Smith interception. Their playoff fates. I guarantee you that there are people listening to this podcast too.
Oh, I had one. I had a quick fantasy story. Nobody cares about my fantasy team, but I'll tell it anyway. So I'm in second place in my division, and the same record as first place, and points is the tiebreaker. And the first place team gets a bye. So I'm 38 points behind first place. That's a ton of points. So I put up what apparently is like one of the top 10 scores in league history. And I was still down. This guy had me by 38 points. I was still down 2 points to this guy for the season total. And it's an IDP league, so I had Rashad Jones. And Geno throws the interception at the end to Rashad Jones. That's a 6-point play in that league. I vault the guy, and that's how I got a bye into the week 15. Nice. I have a bye in the playoffs. There you go. So yes, somebody, namely me, benefited from that needless Rashad Jones interception at the end.
Going back to what Busbee really said really quick. When I was watching that game, the announcer was sitting there like, the Buccaneers are blowing a golden opportunity to vault up in the NFC South, as if like once they got into the playoffs and everything would be fine and they'd be a Super Bowl. It's like, we were watching bad football, gentlemen.
Well, all they're looking for is that flag to hang in the rafters. There's not going to be a record attached to it. Whoever ends up hanging that tattered thing.
And by the way, I'm going to point out.
Do their flags go on the boat? Is that how it works?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
I think it goes in that guy's custom Bud Light living room that, Warren Sapp came over to his house.
I haven't seen that commercial enough.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's seen that commercial. It hasn't been on very much. But I want to point out something, though. We're however many minutes into this podcast, and none of us has mentioned the Oakland Raiders. That is the difference between 1 loss and 0 losses, boys. Because if the Oakland Raiders put up that performance on Sunday to drop to 0-12, this entire podcast would have been about the Oakland Raiders 0-16. Nobody cares about the Oakland Raiders anymore. They're totally just blissfully free to suck the rest of the season without anybody caring.
Well, yeah, let's bid farewell to the Oakland Raiders, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whom we will probably not be discussing again this year on the podcast.
Au revoir. All right, let's move on to the lightning round. 3 minutes to ask Frank as many questions as possible. He asked us all Thanksgiving-related questions last week, but now we are turning back the tables to the regular position. And starting with 3 minutes, Jay, you are on the clock starting now.
Where's Rex Ryan going to be next year?
Oh, that's a tough one. Why not just go across the bridge? Go to the Giants. They're going to fire Coughlin anyway, so wouldn't that be fun? You talk about back page right there. Rexy going from the Jets to the Giants. Let's make it happen.
Where will Rex Grossman be next year?
Probably on the SEC network next to Tim Tebow.
Where will a Tyrannosaurus Rex strike in Jurassic Park 3?
I'm looking forward to that. I didn't know that movie was even coming out. And now I'm excited. My whole family's excited. Jurassic Park is back. Who's not excited?
Of that irritating NFL gift family who used to be Vikings fans, who is the one that pisses you off the most?
And the Emmitt Smith woman. It's like you're a Vikings fan and you meet Emmitt Smith for 2 minutes and all of a sudden you're a Cowboys fan? How does that happen? Like, I don't want anybody in her life who needs to have loyalty from her, you're done with her. You cannot trust her. She will turncoat on you.
How did your turkey bowl go? Personal turkey bowl?
Did not have a turkey bowl. I was sick. Ended up with a fever.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know how bad it is. There are bad timings in life, and to get the sickest you've been in many, many years on Thanksgiving is one of the worst things that can happen. Trust me. It was not a very fun Thanksgiving.
All right, so the Lions are only one game back of the Packers. I know you're sour on them, but they have a schedule that includes Buccaneers at home, Vikings at home, at the Bears, and then at the Packers.
That's the
Will
problem.
that last game be for the division title?
Oh, it could be. It definitely could be, and they're not going to win it. There's no chance the Packers are going to blow them out of it. Like, come on! What, this is the year the Lions are going to win at Lambeau? Yeah. Yeah, well, the Packers look so vulnerable at home, and the Lions are going to walk in there. Sure.
Clearly, RG3's done in Washington. Where does he end up?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know. You know, you could see Dallas doing it. You could see the Jets doing it, maybe. That'd be interesting. I don't know. Who's going to... Maybe the Rams?
I was going to say, what if St. Louis not only takes RG3, but all the picks that they dealt for him?
Yeah, let's say that, RG3 gets him back for a 7th or something like that. It's going to... I think it's got to just be with a team that doesn't need him. That's going to be the problem. If he goes to a team that needs him, like the Jets need him, it's not going to work. He needs to go to a team. Again, maybe the Cowboys don't need him. They can coach him up for a year and see what can happen.
Arizona Cardinals started 9-1. They're 9-3 now. What is their final record?
Ooh.
Chiefs at Rams, Seahawks at 49ers.
We're probably 11-5, probably maybe, and I could even be talked at a 10-6. Look, Arizona Cardinals fans got so mad that I said that they're not the same team without Carson Palmer going to Drew Stanton. You're not. You lost your quarterback. Like, there's no shame in that. Any team loses their quarterback, they're going to probably suffer unless you're the Eagles. So it just happens. It sucks. It's not fun for them, but they're not the same team they were, and I don't think they're going to hold off the Seahawks to win a division.
Staying in that division.
That's the 3 minutes.
Oh, man.
Sorry,
I had the greatest question ever, but
podcast
you're not going to
ends
hear it.
now.
You're not going to hear it.
No more questions.
Damn it.
That's enough, gentlemen. We'll practice at 4:30. Players afterward at 5.
Good night.
What were you going to ask, Jay?
Oh, 49ers.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. 49ers, yay or nay on playoffs?
No way. There's too many teams in the NFC.
There you go.
I can't see it. It's Lions are probably going to get in with that schedule. The Cowboys, I think, get in, and the Eagles and Packers are going to get in, obviously. So we're talking. By the way, are the Cardinals going to get out into the playoffs? I think you have to at least have the conversation because there's going to be a good team left out, and if the Cardinals can't hold off the Seahawks, they're in that wild card.
Second straight year at 10-6.
It really might happen. It really might, and I hope it does because I like the Cardinals, but I like it Bruce Arians and I like their defense, but they're just the NFC South hogging up a playoff spot it shouldn't get is going to kick out a good team. It's just math. Somebody's got to go, and it really truly might be the Cardinals.
Brutal.
Very brutal. I told Andy Behrens on Sunday, I'm like, we're going to be sitting here 5 years from now. Remember when the Arizona Cardinals started 9-1 and didn't make the playoffs or just crashed and burned? It's going to be like that Carson Palmer injury year. It's too bad, though. They were a fun team for a while, but
yeah, and they're a different team with Carson Palmer. And I'm not the biggest Carson Palmer fan in the world, but he was playing well. And Drew Stanton's just not that good, and that's fine. He's a typical NFL backup quarterback. He's not that great. It just happens, and it stinks. Who knows though? I mean, that coaching staff is so good. Maybe they roll off 3-1 the rest of the way and easily get in and win the West. Still, I don't know that they can hold off the Seahawks that much longer.
That's going to be a big game against the Seahawks on Sunday night, December 21st.
Yeah, second last week. Right?
It's in Arizona. So,
yeah,
but then they finish at the Niners. their saving grace might be the Niners might have packed it in by then. So.
Could be. It really could be. Yeah. I mean, at that point, I think anyway they're going to be eliminated, unless they can go to Seattle and win. And I didn't see any signs from them that they could beat Seattle. So that's I think the theme of this last month is there's going to be some really good teams on both sides, and the AFC and NFC get left out of the playoffs. I mean, you just look at the AFC and all the teams in that mix. Look at the NFC, and among the Seahawks, Cardinals, Packers, Lions, Eagles, Cowboys, somebody in that group is getting left out. It has to be.
With that in mind, how long before the NFL goes full Bud Selig and goes to 8 playoff teams in a division?
I do not like expanded play. I hate expanded playoffs. I like the fact that the regular season matters. I don't want to add more randomness to the playoffs. It's going to stink for some team to be 10-6 and miss the playoffs. But you know what? You could have gone 11-5. You lost. If the Arizona Cardinals missed the playoffs at 10-6, well, you lost at Atlanta, who's a terrible football team. I'm sorry, but win that game and you're in. You do your job. Get into the playoffs. This isn't the BCS where a team can go undefeated and not make the playoffs. If you handle your business, you're going to get into playoffs. Don't expand it. Don't water it down. The only reason the NFL wants to do that is for money anyway. If you want to make if you want to make the NFC South rule where you need to be 500 to make the playoffs, we're not going to give a division champion a playoff spot if you're under 500. I'm perfectly good with that. 100% on board with that. But don't expand the playoffs just because we've had a year when some 10-6 teams could go left out.
I think it's inevitable because there's just way too much TV money at stake. You throw one of those wild card games in front of ESPN, they probably double the value of the contract and games on Monday night in exchange for it. But the one thing, if you do expand it, I just hope that they never change the bye system because getting that bye can be such a reward. So if you do it, penalize the teams that are barely squeaking in and not the teams that are fighting to 13-3 or 14-2 records. I don't think that'd be fair.
And that makes the regular season good. One of the key things in December is going to be who gets the buys in the NFC and who gets the buys in the AFC. Can the Broncos hold off the Bengals when the Broncos go play the Bengals, I think they play Monday night, week 16. That game, which if you don't have a bye system means nothing, that game is probably determining who gets a bye into week 2 of the playoffs. It could be anyway. I mean, who knows what will happen in the next 2 weeks, but that's great. That's good for the game. It adds intrigue, and don't water that down. Don't take it away.
It is kind of amazing that for all the other changes we've seen in the playoffs and other sports, especially baseball, we haven't seen it in football. I mean, since I've been following it, I think it's always been this way. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah. I would have to look back to see the last major change. I think it went from 5 to 6 at one point in our lifetime.
Yeah.
That there used to be 3 division winners and 2 wild cards, and one team got a bye. Is that correct? Does that sound right?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It hasn't really fundamentally. It hasn't changed in a really long time, and I like that. I think the playoffs are perfect as is. You don't need to let half the league in. You don't need that. The regular season is what it is, and if you don't get in, tough. That stinks for you. But it's set up the way that you're really rewarding the best teams in football, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Well, let's save our bitching for the college football playoff for next week when the Big Ten champion Wisconsin Badgers are on the outside looking in with no Rose Bowl to play in.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. This has been the Shutdown Corner Podcast. Go Badgers this weekend. Go Badgers on Wednesday. I know that Jay will be rooting for both as an honorary Badger of this podcast.
Without a doubt.
So we will be back on Friday to preview Week 14. This has been the Shutdown Corner Podcast. Kevin Kaduk, Frank Schwab, and Jay Busbee. We thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.